So good morning. Good morning, dear Sangha. Today is the 19th of November in the year 2023, and we are in the Loving Kindness Temple, New Hamlet, during the Rains Retreat 2008-2009. Oh, 2023-2024. I've just gone back 15 years, lost 15 years of my life. Well, okay. Well, I have to admit, I'm feeling a bit nervous right now. I know my heart is beating really fast. My hands are, it feels like they're shaking. You can't really see it. And like we say in Dharma sharing, if your heart is beating fast, you must have something to say. But I'm not sure if it's beating fast because I have something to say, or if it's just because I'm really frightened to be up here. So 2023, 2024. So this Rains Retreat, we are, as a Plum Village Fourfold Sangha, we are learning again about the Plum Village ethics, Plum Village vision for global ethics, and kind of the framework for that. So we are reviewing Tay's Dharma talks from 2008 and 2009, 15 years ago. And some of these Dharma talks have been subtitled and available in Vietnam, in online. So look at my head right now. It's time and space, I have I'm completely disoriented. That's a sign of something. So, so the Dharma talks, they're in Vietnamese from the Dharma talks from the winter of 2008 and 2009, and they're available for the first time online in English. So if you like, you may like to, if you wish, you may like to follow those talks to get a better sense of what today's Dharma talk is about. That is, if for friends who have just come on Friday, this might be a bit disorienting. So just a little bit of context, what we are doing together here, this Rains Retreat. And so far for our community, the Dharma talks that we have heard Tay give in 2008, 2009, the ones that we have heard so far, and also one from the June retreat, 2009. These talks are called The Path of the Buddha. The Path of the Buddha. And in those talks, Tay kind of gave us a lay of the land, a kind of a framework for the Buddha's contribution for global ethics. And so maybe this morning, just to kind of help everyone not be as disoriented as me, maybe we can spend the first 10, 15 minutes to get reoriented, get familiar with kind of like the lay of the land that Tay gave us from the beginning of this Rains Retreat till now. Maybe standing up helps. So in one of the first talks that we heard this Rains, Tay stressed the importance of being able to identify our pain, identify what is going on for us in the present moment. um, especially the pain that is there. So, in the practice of Plum Village, we want to be able to, when you come here, one of the things, of course, first transmission is, are you capable of coming back to the present moment? Can you train your capacity to come back to the present moment and to recognize what is going on in the body as well as in the surrounding, in our feelings, in our perceptions, in our consciousness? So what's going on in the body? What's going on in the mind, inside and around us? So all of the practices that we are introduced here will help us to be able to do that, kind of get oriented, get a lay of the land of what is going on in the present moment. And this is something very important. So before we even talk about identifying the pain or any Buddhist framework or any kind of framework, any kind of foundation, we have to first talk about this particular foundation, which is the capacity to be mindful and aware of what is going on in the present moment. And especially what is going on in your body, because that will tell you a lot about what's going on in your mind. Yeah. So Tay spent a good part of one of the Dharma talks just naming the kind of, how would we talk about the pain in our time? How would we talk about the ill-being that is happening in our time right now? Well, that was 15 years ago, and he gave a whole long list, which was it's still quite relevant, but we can add a lot more to that list. And I don't know if any of you remember what the many things that Tay spoke about and as named, and that he named as the ill-being of our time. Should we just make a list? You can just call it out. Stress, yes. Let me put that like this. Okay. Tension. Uh-huh. Hatred. Fear. Yeah. It's a pandemic. Loneliness. Broken families. Broken families was a term that is 15 years ago, but maybe now they have, I hear they have new words like blended families and many different ways of describing, not necessarily an ill being. Discrimination, did someone say? Okay. Violence. Sadness, depression. Mm-hmm. Okay. Ignorance. Maybe in the Buddhist context, we always have to say, of what? Global warming, yes. Okay. Individualism. That's a whole centuries, many centuries. Okay. Consumerism. Okay. Inequity. Ooh. Addiction. Okay. Suicide. Racism. Terrorism. Anti-capitalism. Anti-terror. You have terrorism and then anti-terrorism. Okay. Attachment. Population control. Education. What about education? Miseducation or indoctrination? Okay. Just there. Hunger. Confusion. Oh, okay. Let's put it like this. Jealousy. Sometimes makes you see the world upside down. Okay. Angoisse, anxiety. Greed. Patriarchy. Maybe we put it up here. Trauma. Fake news. Okay, we're getting more to the really present moment. So fake news. Yeah. Okay. Rushing, running. Eco anxiety. AI. Polarization. Okay. Sexual violence. Mass extinction of species. Okay. craving. Okay. Discrimination, we have. Disconnection. Okay.
Isolation.
Isolation and loneliness. Billionaires, maybe. What's that? Wealth gap, inequity, huh? Wealth inequality, consumption. Humanity is a problem. I'm not sure if this talk will be able to solve that. if, if it's if it's selfishness, okay. Capitalism. Sh- Sidekick? Ah. Ah.
Psychic capitalism, I think he means the colonization of our minds.
Colonization. Okay. Well, I think we have a hefty list. If we continue, we could. I would need a few more boards, I think. Um, but this is good news, actually. This is good news that we can name, uh, uh, the ill being. So, in the Dharma talks that we've heard so far, being able to name the ill being, the Buddhist path, first thing at first is to be able to name the ill being. Name the pain. Name the pain. Where is the pain? And then when we look deeply into the pain, we can recognize the roots of the pain, roots of ill being, or you can say causes of ill being. So I'm just going to do a quick review of what Tay has kind of laid out for us in terms of Buddhist contribution for global ethics. So first, we really have to name the ill being of our time. Before, in our patriarchs, Tay said, they named the ill being as birth, sickness, old age, and death, etc. Like very, what is it? Classic kinds of ill being that the Buddhists would refer to as kinds of suffering. But when we start to speak of ill being or pain in such general terms, we don't really recognize what it is that we need to take care of. So being able to name the pain, whether it's in the body, in the environment, in our society, in our world right now, we can begin to identify what it is that we can do, what has caused it, what has brought it about. And then the third is, how can we put an end to it? So the end of the causes of ill being. And let me just name all four, and then I'll get back to the language of it. And then the fourth is there's a path. There's a path leading to the end of the causes. path leading to the end of the causes of ill-being. So normally, this is what we call in Buddhism the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths. And sometimes the Buddhists, get misunderstood. It's like, why are you just talking about suffering? Suffering, roots of suffering, end of suffering, path to the end of suffering. Why do you just talk about suffering? Big misunderstanding about Buddhists. Actually, the end of the cause of ill-being is happiness. Right? When there is no ill-being, there's happiness. So Buddhists, we also talk about happiness. This is ill-being, the roots or the causes of ill-being, or you can say the path to ill-being. And then the end of the causes of ill-being, which is happiness. And this could be the path to happiness, if we want to rename them. Normally, in the Buddhist literature, you'll just find 4 words: ill-being, causes, cessation, and path. But when it's presented that way, it's not complete. When we say ill-being, the roots of ill-being, the end of the causes of ill-being, the end of the causes of ill-being, and then the path leading to the end of the causes of ill-being, then we understand more clearly what the 4 noble truths actually are. So it's not just ill-being and the causes, but it's ill-being, the causes of ill-being, the end of the causes. And for the third one, when it's phrased like this, you can begin to see you can begin to touch the deeper kind of the meta-ethics of the deeper level of the teachings. Because when we say the end of the causes of ill-being, for instance, choose an example that Tay gave was the stress and tension that's in the body. We identify stress and tension as being ill-being. And then the causes to that stress and tension in the body. Is it because we're overscheduled? Is it because we want too much? We want too many things. Yes, it's been a long day of work already, but I want to finish this series and whatever it is that you want to watch after work or whatever. And sometimes we stay up until 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And that is at a cost to our health. We're not getting enough sleep. Next day we go to work and we accumulate tension. But at nighttime we go home and we're like, oh, this is going to help me release stress and tension. And then we end up consuming something that takes away a lot of time and energy. And it's a cycle like that. So looking into what's causing the stress and tension in my body? Is it the amount of work that I have to do daily? Or is it the amount of things that I want to do in my life? Is it too much? What kind of choices do I have to make? Do I just have to make the choice of, I just need to go to bed early, on time, get my 7, 8 hours, and would I feel better? Do I need to make some sacrifices? So seeing how the tension or the stress has built up in the body, you can already identify what to do about it and how to remove that stress and tension. So ending the causes. Is it because how I have organized my life that has led to stress and tension? And then how can I put an end to that kind of organization? Meaning how can I organized differently. And then the path leading to the end of the causes of ill-being, the path to happiness in Buddhism, this path is called the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, it's nice when you can erase all suffering. There's not that I was overthinking, but as I was erasing the board, there's a story that came up about the end of the causes of ill-being. Anyhow, in one of the talks, Tay said, because of this third noble truth, the presence of this third noble truth, we know that free will is possible. Because we can choose, because of the possibility of the end of ill-being, of transforming ill-being, we know that free will is possible. So he said that the third noble truth, and he said it for the first time on November 23rd, 2008. He said, this is the first time anybody has ever said this, that the third noble truth is proof that humans have free will. And because that line was so alive for me when I heard him say it in 2008 and also again in this rains retreat. So I guess while I was erasing the board, a story about Tay came up, and it's relating to this third noble truth as well. I remember it was in Deer Park, and I was attending. I had an opportunity to attend Tay. So as monastics, one of the ways that we can have an opportunity to be close to our teacher and to kind of learn from his ways, whether how he eats or drinks tea or goes about his day or things like that. So we have a chance to be close to him by attending our teacher. So basically your job is just to go get food, make tea. If you're going with him accompanying him to the Dharma talk, you take his shoulder bag, bring his notebooks, etc., an umbrella. Basically you're doing everything you can to kind of ensure your teacher's comfort and minor, needs. And so one day in Deer Park Monastery, I had a chance to attend my teacher, attend Tay, and that day I was attending him with another sister, and she was from Indiana. So myself and my sister from Indiana, we're both. Indiana is a state in the United States, for those of you who are unfamiliar. So me and my this American sister, and I remember as we were attending Tay, he kept looking at us, one then to the another, from one of us to the next, one of us to the next. And I remember there was a glint in his eyes, right? And I just registered it as such. And then later on in that day, when my sister, she brought one of us had to stay with Tay, and one of us would go and do the dishes or wash the cups and things like that. And I remember when my sister was going out to wash the dishes or to do the dishes, Tay, he looked at me and he said, you know, you're Vietnamese and she's American and you two can be friends. And actually when I heard that line, I was like, gosh, Tay, why are you stating such an obvious? Yeah, like it's just like a non-statement. I just felt like it was such a non-statement. You're Vietnamese and she's American and you two can be friends. And later, sometimes when you're with a Zen master, he'll say something and it just doesn't register. And then sometimes it would take a week, a month, a few years later, and then something ripens in terms of understanding in your consciousness. And so I think I just, Tay said that and I just registered it. And then later, I can't tell you how long it took me. I'd be quite embarrassed. Later, it's a testament to my slowness in Zen training. So later, I realized, for Tay to say that, what did it mean for Tay to be able to make a statement like that? And I realized he was in the war, the American War, the Vietnam War, whichever way you want to name it. He was in the war, and maybe at the height of that war, everyone who was involved, his generation, everyone around him, maybe couldn't imagine that one day a young Vietnamese woman and a young American woman can live in harmony with each other, can be friends with each other. And so when I look back and I remember the glint in Tay's eyes and what he had said after, Gong is my child. You're Vietnamese and she's American and you can be friends. What that meant for Tay as he was like living a moment of healing. He was witnessing the possibility of healing, the possibility of reconciliation, the possibility of peace, and the possibility of friendship. And that had happened a few decades after the war. So at the height of the war, maybe no one could have imagined such a thing was possible. And then that day, when Tay was just looking at one young Vietnamese woman, one young American woman, and we're just being very harmonious together. I got along very well with the sister. And what that meant, as Tay was looking at us, and in the through the lens of what he had witnessed from war, the height of the war, all of the efforts he had put in to call for peace, etc. And then suddenly, a few decades later, just healing was possible. Reconciliation was possible. Transformation was possible. So, the end of the causes of ill-being, the possibility of transformation of ill-being. Sometimes at the height of something, you wouldn't be able to recognize it, right? But it's possible. And and I also realized when Tay said that, the amount of pain that he must have been able to transform, to be able to recognize that and to celebrate that moment. there was a lot of pain that he had been able to transform from the war. Okay, moving on. So the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. And when we speak about the Noble Eightfold Path, we speak about, you can start with right mindfulness. You say mindfulness leads to concentration. And that leads to right view or right insight. So in Buddhism, we have the three pairs: mindfulness, concentration, and insight. When we are mindful of something enough, concentrated on something enough, an insight can arise. Like, for instance, all of the... And mindfulness, I have to say, for those of you who are just beginning to get into mindfulness, you cannot speak of mindfulness alone. Like, oh, I'm mindful. It doesn't make sense when you say, oh, I'm mindful. It's always mindful of what? Mindfulness is always mindfulness of what? So mindfulness always has an object. Mind always has object of mind. So when we're mindful of something, let's say mindful of one of the kinds of suffering that we have been able to name today, and we take enough time to contemplate it, to be with it, we might have an insight about it, right? For me, I struggled for a very long time with depression, one of the things that you were able to name here. I struggled a long time with depression, but I think I had high-functioning depression because no one knew I was depressed. Very high-functioning depression, and no one knew I had many things in my mind. I struggled a long time with it. And when I first came to, and actually when I was in the midst of it, when I was, before I met Tay, right? Anytime it came up, I really didn't know how to be with it. So I would just, I knew it was there, and it was in the very darkest corners of my mind. I didn't even dare to allow it to come up and to look at it, because I knew somehow I knew I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't have the capacity to look at it. I wouldn't have the capacity, I wouldn't be strong. Maybe I would have a complete breakdown if I allowed it to come up. So I always put it in the back of my mind, but it was always burning. It was always burning there. And then it wasn't until I met Tay, went to my first retreat, and suddenly Tay spoke about being able to recognize our strong emotions and just naming it as a practice, what he called mere recognition. When it comes up, all you have to do is say hello to it. And for the first time, I felt so safe. It's like, oh, I didn't have to do anything about it. I didn't have to solve it. I didn't have to figure out how to end it. All I had to do was say hello to it. And I was like, okay. And then for the first time, I was able to allow it to come up and to just say hello to it. And then in that retreat, he also taught many things, including how our depression needs food to survive, or how anything needs food to survive. And as soon as I was able to, okay, so, well, this isn't as scary as I thought it was, this is okay. It comes up, and I'm like, okay, I know you're there. I know you're there, even though I don't want to look at you right now. I know you're there. And already that offered me a sense of relief and a sense of kind of agency over this huge depression that was very much burning in the back of my mind for many years. And then the second part was, it needs food to survive. It needs food to survive, whether it's in our way of thinking, in our the things that we consume, the daily conversations, the books, the music, etc. And then when he said that, I was really looking at everything that I was letting in, including ideas of, what my life should be or shouldn't be like, etc. And you engage in these conversations on a daily basis with loved ones or friends or things like that. And I realized what was being watered in me all the time. Through the music that I consumed, so much sadness, and the books that I read, so much individualism, so many ideas that weren't very helpful for me. And so when I came home from that first retreat, I just stopped listening to the music that I normally listen to. I remember there were some songs that were so terribly sad that my father, he was in the next, and I always turned it on really loud. And even before I go to bed, so my father, some days he would and come in, and it's like, are you sure you want to listen to this before you go to bed? I guess he could pick up what that music was doing to my consciousness, but he couldn't tell me, don't listen to this. He just asked me. And later, in light of Tay's teachings, in terms of food and how it feeds my depression, I understood what my father was trying to do. He was trying to cut off that source of food for me. In a way, he kind of recognized what was going on, but as a parent who wanted to give space to his children, he didn't exactly impose his views on me. So anyhow, as soon as I came home from that retreat, I just stopped listening to that music and stopped reading those books, stopped engaging in those conversations, and I felt my depression was not a problem. It wasn't a problem anymore. It wasn't being fed on a daily basis. So being aware of the depression, mindful of it, concentrate on it, and it gives you some insight into how it's being brought about in your life. So the practice of mindfulness, concentration, and insight. When we speak about right view, this is, in Buddhism, we say right view is the view that transcends all views. Okay, you just have to lock that in for a little bit and I'll explain more later on. And also, right view could be described as the view that is in line with teachings on non-self. That is in line with non-self, in line with impermanence, in line with interbeing. So that is right view. And when you have right view, you have right thinking. Right view leads to right thinking. If your view is a wrong view, that will lead to wrong thinking. For instance, if we view the world as everyone separate individuals, etc., that will lead to the kind of thinking in that line, that everyone is separate. My happiness doesn't have anything to do with your happiness doesn't have anything to do with my happiness. It's your business, it's not my business, that kind of thinking. And then we have right thinking, right speech. Right action. Thinking, speech, and action. Actions, these three we say in Buddhism is called karma. Karma simply means action. Actions of body, speech, and mind. And then we have, how many do I have? Right diligence. Or maybe that goes after. Right livelihood. And then right diligence. So this is the noble eightfold path, the path that leads to happiness, the path that can help you sustain your happiness. Yeah. So when there is a right view, right view, a right understanding, it can help you to think in a way that is more conducive to happiness, think in a way that is more compassionate, more understanding, less harmful. And the same with our speech, the same with our bodily actions, the career choices that we make as well. So the path, this word right here, it is because there is intention there. Because you also have wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration, wrong insight, wrong diligence. All of these things, it could, you have wrong view. The word right, it speaks of intention and the kind of life, the kind of world we want to build, the kind of life we want to live. The kind of life we want to live is the kind of life that maybe can increase happiness, to decrease suffering, to increase happiness. And so a part of these eight elements, all of them will be conducive to that. How can I increase my happiness? How can I take care of my suffering? Because all of these things, it could go in the other direction as well. But in Buddhism, we speak about the noble when we speak about the noble eightfold path, we're speaking about the right, kind of the right path, the path leading to happiness. The opposite is the path leading to suffering, which is this, right? So today I'm supposed to cover a bit on comparative ethics and the criteria of Buddhism. So how would we know if something is right or if something is wrong? How do we know if a view is right or a view is wrong? Like I said before, in Buddhism, we say right view is a view that is in line with the teachings of non-self, in line with impermanence, in line with interbeing. And right view is something trainable, something trainable. For instance, in Plum Village, you might have been given the instructions that when we do walking meditation, where you're walking, this individual, one person walking. And when we walk as a community, we can get in touch with not just our own energy of mindfulness. We can borrow the collective energy of mindfulness of the community, and that supports our experience of walking meditation. So already in that way of walking, I am walking, one person walking, and I am walking with the Sangha in this community. And already in that experience, you can train yourself to see that the energy of mindfulness, which I think belongs to me alone, that is coming from me, that I am generating, how much of it am I generating and how much of it am I borrowing from the community? How much of that energy of mindfulness is coming from the community, from the hundreds of people who are walking with me right now? So already we can touch the insight that, the insight of interbeing. My experience of mindfulness, mindful walking, is not mine alone. It also belongs to the collective. And there's no line where you can draw, this belongs to the collective and this is me. Because actually you are walking as well, and you are offering your energy of mindfulness to the collective. So it's this way of training to see things, to see how we are part of a collective. As individuals, we are part of a collective. The individual making up the collective, and the collective also making up the individual. For instance, if you are a monastic brother and sister, and you love drinking tea, you love having free time, you're sitting in the middle of the forest drinking tea. This moment is so enjoyable. And other brothers and sisters are so busy working with this and that, and maybe in that moment you have a thought, they're not practicing as well as I am. They don't know how to enjoy. They don't know how to slow down. They're so busy. They don't know how to slow down, etc. So that kind of view goes against the view of interbeing. The teachings on interbeing. You know very well that moment that you have drinking tea, enjoying that tea in the forest, in the beautiful greenery, crisp autumn air, etc., is thanks to everyone else in the community doing everything else that they are currently doing in the community. And that moment is only possible with the whole community doing what it is doing at exactly that moment. So that moment doesn't belong to you alone. That capacity to enjoy that cup of tea, that opportunity, is not yours alone. It belongs to the community and made possible by the community. So if you have a thought, I'm practicing better, I'm less busy, they're so busy, they're running all the time. Yeah, well, is it right view? So anyhow, right view is trainable. Right view is something that we can train every single day. Not just to see ourselves in the collective in ourselves, but let's say during walking meditation. And you may have the realization, Tay started this way of walking, right? This kind of walking meditation, it's very specific to Plum Village because the Vipassana way of doing walking meditation is very different. But Plum Village, the style of walking in Plum Village is one of relaxation. You do walking meditation, aware of every step, but the feeling is you do it very naturally. It feels natural, and you do it at your own pace, with the pace of the rhythm of your breathing, your own steps, etc. So this way of walking meditation, something that Tay has transmitted to us, and Tay has taught us as a community. And when you walk, you realize, this isn't my own step. This is Tay walking. This is in this step that I'm taking in this moment, Tay is present, right? And then also in this step that I am taking this moment, maybe during the walk, I may be struggling. I may be looking ahead. Oh, that sister, she's going so slow. We're doing walking meditation outside, but it feels like we're doing slow walking meditation in the meditation hall. This isn't supposed to be the pace of walking meditation. Outside, it's not supposed to be gunhan. It's supposed to be a real walking meditation. And then I'm looking, and then, so at the moment I realized, that's my mother right there. That's my mother also walking with me, that energy of really rushing. Not just my mother, a whole society. My poor mother, she gets blamed for many things. But a whole society. So in that moment of walking like that, you can train yourself to see, I'm not alone. There is a non-self that is walking. There's no separate me walking. This walking experience is made possible by all my ancestors, my teachers, my friends. And Brother Phúc Lin, sometimes he goes, did you know it takes a whole planet for you to take this one step? Oh, it's more than this planet. So anyhow. It takes more than this planet for you to make this one step. So I hope you enjoy your walking today and the experience of cultivating right view, right as we are experiencing walking meditation. So Tay also spoke of, so this is right view, or, and starting with here, mindfulness. Mindfulness, so you can say mindfulness is the foundation of the Buddhist ethic. Mindfulness is the foundation of the Buddhist ethic. Okay, let me erase this. So in Tay's last Dharma talk, the Dharma talk that we heard on Wednesday, he spoke about different schools of ethics. One of them was utilitarianism. And this school of ethics, the tenet of this school of ethic is actions that lead to the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. That is morally correct. And so Tay spent a little bit of time examining this. Actions leading to happiness. So their criteria for choosing what is morally right or wrong is based on happiness or suffering. So what leads to happiness, we do. What leads to suffering, we refrain from doing. It sounds almost similar to Buddhists, but not exactly. So when Tay was talking about this, especially utilitarians, so sometimes what it means is the outcome. Utilitarianism kind of focuses on the outcome. And the outcome meaning the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. And so sometimes the ends justifies the means. And then right after he spoke about utilitarianism, Tay went on to talk about the atomic bomb, the dropping of the atomic bomb. So, does the ends justify the means? Because that was the kind of when people are debating about is it right or wrong to drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There was a line of reasoning that went, well, if we do this, we can bring a swift end to the war. And that will prevent more casualties than if the war would continue. So they were also thinking of how to reduce the greatest suffering or how to bring about the greatest happiness. Thinking in terms of along this line, that kind of reasoning. And Tay said, he'd looked deeply many times into the atomic bomb and seen that the motive wasn't just to put a swift end to the war, but also the motive was there was a political agenda as well, not just a military agenda. Dropping the atomic bomb, would that prove that the U.S. was number one? Would that prove that that you were number one, that your country is a superpower? And I remember many years ago I saw this interview with Oppenheimer, one of the scientists behind the creation of the atomic bomb. I actually saw two interviews. One was with Oppenheimer, and I remember him saying in the interview that this would change the face of negotiations. And I remember at the time, just like my interactions with Tay, I just registered it, but understanding came much later. This would change the face of negotiations. And as a nun, when I remember what he had said, it's like, what does that mean? This would change the face of negotiations. Because in a negotiation, when you're sitting down at a table negotiating for something, ideally you would talk about needs of both sides, suffering of both sides, and what will it take to solve some issues on both sides. And then yet you come to the table with the atomic bomb at your disposal and you say, oh, this will change the face of negotiations. What does that mean? That means you're coming to the table and sending the message. The conversation is no longer about needs or suffering or trying to solve the suffering of both sides. The conversation becomes, I have the power to destroy you. And therefore, what I say has much more weight than what you say. I have the power to destroy you. Changing the face of negotiations, is that what he meant? Coming to the table with an atomic bomb, what message are we at our disposal? What message are we sending? I have the power to destroy you. And actually Oppenheimer even said this. He quoted from the Bhagavad Gita that I am come in the face of death. You are bringing death to the table. You're saying, I have the power to destroy you. That's what you're saying. And that's not a negotiation. That's terrorism. That's real terrorism. That's true terrorism. It's not negotiations anymore. So that was a very interesting part of the Dharma talk on Wednesday for me. I also remember what Richard Feynman said in an interview about the atomic bomb. He said, he remembers that many of the scientists who were involved when they dropped the bomb, they had a moment when they just had a beer together. Very casual, social moment where, the bomb worked. Let's celebrate with this beer. And it was so removed from the suffering, you see, of the capacity to drop a bomb, and you are here on the other side of the planet having a beer and celebrating. Meanwhile, someone's mother, children, father, grandparents, 140,000 people died within a few minutes. And you sit at the other side of the world having a beer. It's quite something. Anyhow, mindfulness of suffering, mindfulness of the ill-being, it's crucial to us to cultivate that capacity to name the suffering. And first we have to be able to name it within ourselves. So the Buddhist criteria for identifying so there's a list, and it's 11 o'clock, so I'll do this in 5 minutes. There's a list of criteria that we can use to decide what is right and what is wrong. And this list is kind of like taste selection, because a number of us, we try to go in and see if it was a part of the teachings in any body as this complete set, but no, we haven't been able to find it. And so we believe this is taste selected list of criteria, Buddhist criteria for deciding what is right and an action is right or wrong. So the first criteria is pain and pleasure. And because I'm going to move through them, I'm just going to name them for now. You can go to the Dharma talk and get a bit more explanation. First is pain and pleasure. The second is beneficial or unbeneficial. So basically, an action that leads to pain, we avoid. Action that leads to happiness or pleasure, green light. But of course, if you look deeply, then that's a problematic kind of criteria. So that's why you need this, beneficial and unbeneficial. Is that action leading to pleasure actually beneficial or unbeneficial? Drinking wine, for instance, or a bunch of other things. The third criteria is ignorance. Delusion and awakening. I'll say that. awakening. The fourth criteria is proscriptive and preventive. The fifth one is to open or bar the way. Sixth one is it appropriate to our times? And is it in line with the teachings? And the seventh one is, Tay says, the criteria of lokatara, or the supramundane, or the ultimate. Or the ultimate. Okay. I actually want to go back and talk about this delusion and awakening as a criteria. We know that in Plum Village, we are encouraged to, when we have a strong emotion, that's the worst time to make a decision. Whether something is right or wrong, that's just the worst time to make a decision. So we have to do everything we can to calm the emotion, to calm down the emotion. Otherwise, we would not be making the best decision. So we have to be able to make decisions while we are very clear-minded, and with all the clarity that we can muster. So this is one of the criterias. And this criteria actually has been coming up a lot for me. Especially as I look into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For me, it's also it feels very difficult to talk about even now, because I feel it's quite emotionally charged on both sides, and so I feel this criteria. I've been really trying to see how this criteria can be applied in this situation, and. For me, of course, when events earlier in October happened, it was very emotionally charged. I think the whole world was emotionally charged. And so decisions that came out from that being so charged with emotion, there's a lot of suffering involved on both sides. A lot of suffering involved. And so I'm going to take it one step backwards. In 2003, I was lucky, and I was a novice, and I was lucky enough to be here in Plum Village when we had our first retreat with Israelis and Palestinians. And I was lucky enough to witness how Tay and a number of my elder brothers and sisters were able to organize that retreat. And it was quite genius, I felt, when I remember right now how it was organized. So we had one group from Israel and one group from Palestine come to Plum Village. One group stayed in Upper Hamlet and the other group stayed in Lower Hamlet. Of course, in the beginning, it's very difficult to even look at each other. So we kept the two groups separate. One group was practicing with the brothers in Upper Hamlet and brothers and sisters in Upper Hamlet during one of our summer retreats, and the other group in Lower Hamlet. And the first week, we just focused on practicing how to walk, how to eat, how to experience a moment of, how to recognize maybe joy or the wonders of life that are available in the present moment. That was all that we did in the first week. Towards the end of the first week, you can start to talk about some of the pain and difficulty. But before that, we didn't touch the pain. We didn't touch the difficulty. And in the second week, we brought the two groups together. To be in the same space. And to start to talk about the pain and difficulty. And when one side spoke, the other side just listened. It was very hard. I remember it was so charged, and there were so many tears. And so many, I remember the atmosphere in the room. So many of the retreatants had to hold each other as they were listening to the other side share, because it was so difficult to talk about the pain, especially when there's so much pain inside yourself and you have to sit in a space to hear the pain of the other person. It's very difficult. But because they had a week to take care, everyone had a week to really take care of what was going on inside. So it was possible. Even though it was very challenging. And I remember seeing retreatants holding each other just to offer each other strength to be able to listen. And then, and the instructions were, of course, when one side speaks, we just listen. We listen with all of our attention and wholeheartedness, and knowing that just by listening, it will help alleviate the pain of the other person. And also knowing that we will have a chance to share about our part. So whatever wrong perceptions, wrong views that are shared as we're listening, we can really give it space, because we know that we'll have a chance to share our part. So those were the instructions that were given. And the first day, one side would share. It's very, very difficult. And sometimes it would take two deep listening sessions like that for one side to share. And then the next day, the other side would have a chance to share. The deep listening would happen for that side. And I remember at the end of the retreat, second to last day, during the walking meditation, some Israelis and Palestinians were able to hold each other's hands to do walking meditation. Something I never thought would be. I didn't even think it would be possible. But it was possible, and it happened all within the span of 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So when I think of the recent events in Israel and Palestine, it hasn't snuffed out hope for me for peace, because I know it's a possibility. I felt like I witnessed it firsthand, the possibility of, of peace. And also, yesterday, as I was kind of looking at this and seeing what I want, to speak today, I just had a moment of curiosity, and I went on the internet and just to look for some numbers. I really wanted to know the arms industry, how much profit there was in 2023. And it was quite incredible, the numbers that I saw. And what was even more revealing, one statistic I found, was that the US holds 40% of the world's exports in arms manufacturing. 40% of the global market in arms manufacturing. So when I look at these situations happening, whether in the Ukraine, in the Middle East, a little bit everywhere, is it a moral dilemma? Is it the issue that is really being presented to us? Is that the real issue? Or is there another layer? And who is profiting? Who is profiting from, and who is exploiting the strong emotions of both sides? Who is exploiting and who is profiting from the strong emotions that are going on the ground of both sides? We really have to look at it through the lens of the military-industrial complex as well. And then in my research, I also found that in our backyard in Bergerac, there is a huge company that has just signed a $1 billion contract with the US Army. And this company produces, they call it, what is it? Combustible objects. Oh yeah. They call it combustible objects. And this company is located in Bergerac. Just signed a $1 billion contract with the US Army. Who is profiting? So when we speak about peace, of course, we have to be very careful of the voices that are not advocating peace. We have to be very careful of the voices that are not advocating ceasefire, because someone is profiting. Someone is exploiting the emotions of the majority. And we have to really be awake. We have to awaken to that fact. Mm. And is the real terrorism still going on? Real terrorism. Where is the terrorism coming from? Is it coming from... Yes, I grew up in the US, so the word terrorism, I came to understand, and terrorists, every time that word is in the news, I came to understand it as having a certain face, obviously, if you're in the US, all these images, you end up, every time the word terrorist comes up, a certain ethnicity, a certain face, certain kind of whatever comes up. But in my deep looking, I see that's just one kind. Terrorism is happening on both sides. And there's real terrorism when at your hands you are holding all of the mass weapons of mass destruction in your hand. That is true terrorism. And what you do with it. So for me, I think in our generation, it will take us a long time to kind of change the face of negotiations again. What are the terms that we want to bring to the table when we say negotiations? When we negotiate for peace, what are the terms that we are speaking about? Is it fair? Are we using fear? Are the terms of the negotiation based on fear? Or will it be based on understanding and compassion? Are we communicating, dialoguing in such a way that understanding and compassion is our motive and not fear? I also wanted to look up yesterday, which I wasn't successful, which political parties, the CEOs of all of the major arms companies were affiliated with. But I didn't get that far. There's just no time. But you can kind of guess. You can kind of guess. And in America, there's also a huge problem with gun control. I also looked at some of the statistics yesterday. And of course, the NRA, National Rifle Association, NRA is, I saw like the amounts of money they funnel into campaigning versus the gun control people. There's like a huge, it's like a 20-fold difference in the kind of money that is being put into lobbying to keep laws that support guns and ownership and things like that, keep laws in place. And so we have to do some deep looking. And then what kind of actions can we take? Who are we supporting in office? What kind of laws are they supporting? We really have to add our voice to it. Yeah. Okay, Lokatara. This is the point of confusion for my, I'll do this maybe in 5 minutes, hopefully. The ultimate criteria is a point of confusion for everyone. But maybe, okay, I can do this through a story. When I was at home visit this last time, I had this interaction with my sister and my brother. So one day my sister brought home a baguette. And she's like, "Lan, this is the best baguette in the world." And I had a very unfiltered moment. And I said, "But sister, you know I live in France." You know I live in France. She's like, no, this is the best baguette in the world." And then I said again, "You know I live in France." So, and then my brother was standing next to her, and his jaw just dropped. And then he couldn't believe what he was witnessing. He couldn't believe what he was witnessing. And so he's like, "I can't believe you are a nun for 20 years and you can say that." You being a nun for 20 years, I can't believe you can say something like that. Here is someone offering you her heart, and all you can say is, "I live in France." And so I said, so I had another reaction. I'm like, I have a right to be flawed. I don't have to be a perfect nun. And so we were having a very brotherly, sisterly moment. But it almost became a fight of which baguette was the best baguette in the world. And is this baguette the foundation of all baguettes? So that was what this fight almost turned into. So here's my sister. Here's my sister saying, "This baguette from this particular store in the US And there are many other baguettes, right, in many other stores. This baguette, this one, is the baguette, is the ultimate baguette. And I was saying, no, 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 no. I live in France. Over here, they have many different baguettes, and they're superior to this baguette over here. But she was saying that, no, 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 this was the baguette, and it is the ultimate baguette. And it is the baguette which all other baguettes stand on. That was her message. This is the ultimate baguette right here. She's turned this one baguette into the ultimate baguette. So in Buddhism, we have this example of the water and the wave, the wave and the water. So you have waves that go up and down, this wave and that wave. This wave is higher than that wave is lower than that wave. This wave is more beautiful, that wave is less beautiful, etc., etc. But the nature of all the waves is water. And you cannot say that, no, this one wave is water right here. You cannot say, this one wave is water. All the other waves is not water. So basically my sister was saying, this one baguette is the baguette. All the other baguettes, they're not really baguettes. And we often get caught in this kind of thinking. Where we turn one thing into the ultimate thing. And so going back to this wave and water, the wave, every single wave, the nature of the wave is water, whether it's high or low, etc., etc. And once the wave realizes that it's water, it loses all complex. It knows that it's water, so it doesn't really matter. It goes up or down, high or low. It has the foundation. It's water, right? This time it's low, next time it's high, etc., etc. It has freedom because it knows that it's water. So, for my brothers and sisters, when you heard about this ultimate criteria, how many of you turned it into a baguette? The ultimate baguette. What I mean by that is, and I think there is a misunderstanding when we say the ultimate criteria. Maybe we should say the criteria of the ultimate, the criteria of the ultimate. And in Buddhism, we have this example. Tay gives this example of Zorro. We call it the Z of Zorro. So in Buddhism, we speak about the relative truth. And then we speak about the ultimate truth. And on the level of the relative, you can see birth, death, being, non-being. You think in terms of coming and going, inside, outside, etc. But on the level of the ultimate, there is no birth and no death. No being, no non-being. No inside, no outside. No beginning, no ending. And how do you reconcile these two truths? It seems so opposite of one another. So these criteria, in Tay's Dharma talk, he said, these criteria, they are on the level of the relative truth. If you look at pain, it's not pleasure. If you look at what's beneficial, it's not beneficial. Delusion, they're quite opposites, right? And they, so it looks like they are operating on the level of the relative truth. And in Buddhism, how do we go from the relative truth to the ultimate truth? How do we access the ultimate truth? And we speak about the ultimate. Maybe one of the biggest mistakes that we often do is we turn it into a thing. We turn it into a thing, a place, something to look for, to attain, to get. And this is the first mistake when we think of the ultimate in that way. The ultimate is not a thing to get. It is you can say the ultimate transcends all views, transcends birth and death, being and non-being, coming and going, etc. And how can we get access to that? So this line right here, in Buddhism we call it the wisdom of adaptation. So there are kinds of insights that can help us to access the ultimate truth. And those insights are, we've named them, non-self, impermanence, interbeing, permanence, interbeing. And actually, all of these criteria, when you look at it from the level of the relative, they are outside of each other. But when you look at it from the point of view of the ultimate, when you look at it with the insights of non-self, impermanence, or interbeing, you can also access so on one level, it looks like it's a relative truth, but you can access a deeper truth in them as well and break free from the pairs. Like for instance, if you look deeply into pain, you can see, or if you look deeply into, if you say happiness and suffering, it's easier to understand. If you look deeply into happiness, you can identify the interbeing between happiness and suffering. You can never have happiness alone. And the same, when you look into something, you cannot have it alone. You wouldn't have that concept if there was no opposite. So then you can access the you can access the interbeing of it. You can access the impermanence of it. And when we do that, then those ideas no longer apply, you see. They no longer apply in the same way. I'm really out of time. I guess we can break down this more in Sister Truday's class for those of you who are following it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for your patience and your deep listening today. I'm not sure if I've added any clarity to this yet. I think it needs another session to kind of unpack this for everyone.